Hey everyone, welcome to Live Stream Tuesday with me, Paul Mampilli, and today we are going to do another breakdown of a single stock. A lot of people liked it when I broke down and laid out the case for Mankind Corp. I think that was last week. Yeah, I think that was last week. It was last week, but it was close enough. And a lot of people said, "Hey, we really love the way that you broke this out, showed us what is going on and why." And today I want to bring to your attention a stock that I actually talked about. When did I talk about this? I talked about this on Feb 27th, 2024. So Feb 27th, 20. Yeah, let me see. I share this. Yeah. So I talked about the stock back then, and I want to go through this again because this biotech company just released some really exciting data, and what it does is it confirms what I had laid out, the thesis I laid out. And hey, no guarantees, but there is a saying that I remember from my analyst days and my portfolio management days, which is that, if you can get one big biotech correct, yeah, that could be it. That could be it. I mean, one of my biggest gains ever was what was the company that is currently called Sarepta Therapeutics. Back in that time, it was called AVI Biopharma. And I remember, I think I put like maybe a few $1,000s in. And one day I woke up, some clinical result was announced, and it was suddenly $25,000. And I just remember thinking like, oh my goodness. I mean, I didn't have a lot of money back then, but I can tell you, I mean, it just came so out of the blue. Felt so extraordinary, so incredible. And those of you who know me and have come over from Banyan Hill know that I have been an active investor in biotechnology for 20 plus years. I got my start around the time when the human genome was being decoded. And the story goes as follows, which is like all these biotech stocks were going crazy back then. And the portfolio manager I worked for, she was like, who wants to take biotech? And, well, biotech is sciencey and all these things. And it was new. Like, I mean, nobody could really understand, like, why are these companies just going up like crazy? Because remember, early stage biotechnology companies have no revenue. I mean, all they have is intellectual property. They got these clinical trials, and no one knows, like, is anything going to come of it? Is nothing going to come of it? So I remember this. I got the benefit of the positive stereotype. She's my manager. Her name was Mary. She's like, Paul, you people, meaning referring to Indian people, you people are supposed to be smart and good in science. There was a conference going up in Boston where all these companies were presenting. She's like, I want you to leave the office right now and get on a plane, go to Boston, and figure out what's going on. And that was the beginning of a love affair with biotechnology that really has never ended. I've always been an investor in biotechnology. I actually stacked my knowledge in biotechnology by buying textbooks initially. And then, thank God for Google. And I used to just sit there and Google each term initially. And I just stacked my knowledge up one sort of terminology at a time, one little piece of jargon at a time until I could put the world together. I'm no like doctor or anything like that, but I know enough to be able to read clinical trial results and make a judgment based on experience, understanding of the world. So that's what we have in store for you today, which is a shot at like, yeah, incredible, yeah, sudden potential gains, because the one thing that also I've learned from being in the markets for as long as I have, which is that in the world of biotechnology, a drug that addresses cancer, yeah, that you get right, that is like, yeah, I mean, if you can make 300% in some other drug, cancer drugs, yeah, you can go, I don't know, 700-800%. And we've had some of these big winners in our portfolios in the past. But before we get there, let me do all the usual legal disclaimer stuff, and then we'll get to the good stuff. All right. Which is that this live stream and the content from ATG Digital Media is not investment or financial advice. It is presented to you as opinion, information, engagement, and most importantly, entertainment. I do not want to be boring. I mean, I should hopefully make you interested in investing and in finding out, learning something new. Also, all ATG Digital content may contain errors, oversights, and mistakes. Yeah, I'm a human being. Yeah, I mean, do my best, but like information sometimes changes. Sometimes you just, don't have the right thing at the right time. Also understand that investment operations, which is what, buying or selling a stock, doing a trade in crypto or options, have significant risks and can lead to the loss of your principal. I, the owners, employees, contractors, own, trade, and transact in the securities that are mentioned in this video, and all content from ATG Digital Media. Next, we do not take money from companies or from crypto promoters to recommend their stocks or crypto tokens. A lot of people do this, and by law, you are required to disclose if you have actually taken money to recommend a stock or crypto or anything like that. Quick mention of all of the free content that we actually put out. The Substack, which is after a week off our summer break, we're back live again. I actually did 2 Ballman Speculating podcasts. You can check those out. And I'm obviously on YouTube right now. I'm quite active on X, doing all kinds of things. So follow me there. Instagram, yeah, I'm going to definitely get a little bit more active because I have a Cybertruck now, and it's so exciting and so fun. So I'm going to be putting more content on Instagram on the Cybertruck. I'm having it wrapped in Miami blue. I mean, it is going to be amazing. I mean, it's like this mix of sky and sea blue. And, my Cybertruck is named Elsa. So, she's like, I think that blue of the ice. I mean, anyway, also on Facebook, I actually did a Facebook live session last week when we were off, talking about a number of different things, including Tesla. And then, of course, paid subscriptions start at $9.99 per month at atgdigital.media. All right, let's go back to this. So let me scroll back up here. Yeah, biotech. Feb 27th, I did a video on this stock. Well, you don't need to keep seeing this. Let me just get back to a single screen. And at the time, I was following this stock. It's in our portfolio. And I originally put it in because I had seen that there was this sudden jump up, right, in the stock, and I had traced it back, and it's like, yeah, you see that. I mean, this is a 5-year weekly chart of IDEA Biosciences, and what you'll see is that in April of 2023, there's that sudden bump that just happens, right? And now, if you're someone that's just, in the world of charting, that's called a gap up, right? And gaps up are for a few reasons. One, it's short covering. In other words, people who have bet against the stock, they're wrong, and they are on margin, and they have to go buy the stock. And of course, the market makers will just absolutely jam a high price on you. But when it's not like such a big jump, like here it's from like what? Like yeah, 12, 13 to 17, which is, it's clearly like not like a giant like short squeeze, anything like that. So if it's not a short squeeze, then it's also a shift. And when it's a shift, it's really worth paying attention to because it means that someone gets something that the vast majority of people don't understand. And remember, biotechnology is a little bit of a technical field, right? I mean, you have to have some understanding, obviously, of actual technical biology. You have to have some understanding of clinical trials, which is, rules, regulations, and how drugs are tested. You have to have some understanding how drugs get approved. And then you also have to have some understanding of the commercial marketplace for drugs. In other words, not every drug is like an enormous commercial opportunity, even if it's approved. So you have to mix all of these things. And then there's the element of psychology, which is there in all stocks. But in biotech, it's there extra, extra, extra. Why? Well, because these companies, including Idea Biosciences, they have no revenue. The entire value of this company is based on its intellectual property. And that is very much a subject of judgment. And so you got to mix all these things up in. Anyway, so I see this thing happening, and I'm like, that's very, very interesting. So, what was happening back then? So, this is the actual event that triggers sort of this whole thing, right? Which is that Idea, this is in April of 2023, they announce some data, right? And the data, from having followed biotechnology and particularly cancer drugs for a long time, I'm like, wow, look at this data, right? Now, if you don't have a background in clinical trials and you haven't read like a lot of clinical trials, especially for drugs that for cancer, you would not know that a 45% ORR, yeah, that's big. That's just very big. In other words, 45% of all the people that took the drug showed some response. In other words, there was some activity. The drug actually drove something. And then, there's numbers of like disease control rate of 90%. In other words, this drug actually was able to help the folks that had this cancer. And this is a difficult cancer to treat. It's, good luck pronouncing it, metastatic uveal melanoma. But either way, it's a very difficult cancer to treat. And then you have medium PFS, which is progression-free survival of 7 months. I can tell you that's 7 months for very, very difficult cancers. Yeah, these are big, big, big numbers. So in other words, it's not just like a price bump. Like there's actually like a reason. In other words, somebody out there in the world of biotech investing saw these results. And this is not like a stock that everybody knows, right? I mean, this is not like, nobody's pumping the stock. Like, I mean, I did a Substack on this same one and on February 26th. And I was like, yeah, one of the things like at the time is that the stock was just relentlessly being bid up. I mean, it's tracked back down since then, which is, at some point somebody wanted to take profits. Now, normally when you see this kind of like of a pattern, you're like, there must be, I never put up the Substack, but yeah, it was relentlessly going up, and I just kept looking. I read a lot of trade papers. There's a lot of websites like Fierce Biopharma, and that you can read, and you can go look and type an idea. Nothing. So I came to conclusion it had to be like this drug trial. And then I was like, but I looked into that and I said, yeah, uveal metastatic melanoma is good, but there had to be something more. There had to be something more. And what I found was that there is this drug in their pipeline, right? And it's called IDE 397. And it uses a something that only I can only find idea that like seems to actively pursue this particular technique pathway, of making drugs, which is called synthetic lethality, right? Synthetic lethality. And IDEA has made this claim, right, that based on the drug's development so far, that this IDE 397, right, has the potential to work in 15% of all solid tumor cancers. What's a solid tumor cancer? In other words, something that's like physical, that grows on your body. So the most common ones, prostate, breast cancer, colorectal, lung. But they've made this extraordinary claim that it can work in 15% of solid tumors. I have never seen such a claim before. And I was like, that's interesting. I mean, 15%, I mean, this is, I mean, we're talking about cancer. I mean, one of the most destructive diseases in humankind, and something that, we have been trying to defeat as a species, for 50, 60 years. Now, if I took IDE 397 at face value, IDEA's claim at face value, and this could be like a really, I mean, this could be potentially like one of the biggest drugs ever, right? Because this is a large market. I mean, we're talking about $901 billion. Remember, I mean, this drug is still being tested. You can't get it. Like, if you have cancer and you wanted this drug, you can't get it. It's in clinical trials. So it's probably going to get approved maybe in 2025. But biotech investors are always looking forward, right? And they're like, well, I mean, this, if it were to be approved, would like be gigantic. 901 billion. So we take what, 15% of this? That says, the addressable market for this drug is like 135 billion. Now, I'm not saying that that's what it's going to do, but 135 billion is, the potential market. So, yeah, I mean, even if it got 10%, it would be 13.5 billion. 20% would be what, 27 billion. I mean, heck, even if it did 10%, of that, even if it did 1% of that, it would be $1 billion drug. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And this is not unthinkable. I mean, right now, the biggest best-selling drug for cancer is this drug. It's called Keytruda. It's made by Merck. It's been around since 2014, and you can see that this Keytruda drug, is on track to generate $25 billion worth of sales in 2023. I mean, 25 billion, right? So it's not like a complete pipe dream. It's not complete hype. I mean, this is a real possible potential for IDEA Biosciences potentially to have a drug that could do this. And what is the key to Keytruda sales is that it works in so many different types of cancer types that it's added to pretty much every treatment. It's become essentially what they call the standard of care. Standard of care. Pretty much like for almost like any kind of cancer diagnosis, in all likelihood, you'll be given Keytruda. It works well. The side effect profile is very good. All right. So on Friday, there was an announcement by IDEA saying, hey, on Monday morning, we are going to announce some results on this drug, that I mentioned. IDE 397. And I noticed that in the pre-market already, like we're talking on Friday, right? I mean, this is like, nobody's there. People were excited. Yeah, the stock, even in the post closing market on Friday, yeah, stock was up 14, 15, like almost 20%. Now, sometimes these gains fizzle out. This is a manipulation. They're like trying to like just jam people, either be shorts or getting people all excited. But the truth is that there is no hype around idea. I mean, if you go on X, which is, the most informed part of social media for like biotechnology, there's a bit of a community on Reddit, but X is where like there's quite a bit. There's nothing. There's really nothing. So I was like, that makes it more likely that this actually could be a big deal. So yesterday I was like, okay, set the alarm because, they're going to issue the press release. And here it is. This is what they released on Monday on this IDE 397, which is that these are in even more difficult to treat cancers. They have a 39% overall response rate. Simply means that 39% of all the people that were given the drug, they showed some response, which is, you want the drug to have some response. And they had one CR. CR stands for complete response. In other words, this person was cured. One complete response and 6 partial responses using, various categories they have. 94% disease control rate, 78% of people with tumor shrinkage. And then AE profile stands for adverse events. 5.6% were drug-related. 3 adverse events, no drug-related. I'm bringing this up because adverse events, like while you might think like, oh, if you have cancer, you'll take any drug. The thing is that, if the side effects are too big, you can't really widely administer a drug to people. So like having pretty low side effects, that's a big deal in terms of future sales. So in other words, this trial seems to confirm, what the company has said. In other words, this drug, this IDE 397 seems to actually be like a thing. And so one of the things you want to see is like, okay, what do investors think about this? And so you can see like, yeah, on Monday, yeah, it jumped up and it stayed up. Now today it's seeing a little bit of a sell-off after getting to $41.28. Forget that I'm putting up here. So yeah, that spike up you see prior to today, the red is for today, and that big line, which is a long candle up. This is a candlestick chart, which gives you the open, the high, the low, and the close. It's telling you that the same folks that were back there in April of 2023, they're still paying attention. They didn't sell. In other words, the results were still good. And someone clearly was taking profits from 47 to 32, which is fine. Or someone was like, hey, I don't want to sit around for these results. I'm going to take my profits and go. But the first instinct of investors was to come and actually buy. And that, in my experience, that's always a good sign, that instinctual response, because we know already, like, this is not a hyped stock. I mean, you can go and search anywhere. Nobody's sitting there pounding the table on like, on idea, biosciences, come on, buy. This is the cure. Nobody's doing this. This stock got no hype. In other words, this stock is being bought by professional buyers, professional investors that are pretty much coldly making calculations based on data, based on evidence, based on information. And they're like, yeah, this is the latest piece of evidence that kind of confirms that this thing is legit and for real. And Maybe there was some short covering, but I believe this is part two. In other words, we saw part one last year of the beginning of a bid up. All right. So that was in April. April of 2023. And if I'm right, then we're about to see part two. We're about to see part two. Now, this is a fairly young stock. I mean, this is all of the trading history for Idea Biosciences. It's essentially came IPO in 2018. Well, it went from 1690 all the way down to 3, then to 28 in that COVID market where everything was bid up from 28, then back to 8. And now we're, after hitting 47, we're back to about 40. About 40. Now, if what I'm saying is right, yeah, we're probably going to see, maybe some selling come through in the next couple of days as whoever wants to cash out, cashes out. But then I think we're going to see waves of more buyers come in because they're like, okay, turns out that the management, is not BSing. Like this company and this drug, this IDE 397 has the potential to be huge. And while the company is clearly not able to sell anything, they're still in clinical trials, right? I mean, they still have probably, I would say between 6 to 18 months of trials that they have to do. They still have to get FDA approval. But investors are like, well, if this is as good as they're saying, in other words, other investors are going to come in and they're going to keep the stock fairly high, anticipating the future commercial success, but also anticipating that at some juncture that another company, maybe a company like Merck, maybe a company like GlaxoSmithKline, maybe a company like Novartis, maybe a company like Roche, one of these gigantic, mega big pharmaceutical companies, they see this themselves and they're like, okay, all right, we are not going to let this go. We would like, the next big cancer drug to be at our company. And they will come and they will pay, far higher numbers before approval. I mean, we've seen that before. We had this one with Immunomedics, which was bought out by Gilead for 400% more. So the premium here, though, would have to be big. Like if the potential upside is as big as, I've calculated it, right? 15% of all solid tumors, nearly $1 trillion market for these kinds of treatments. 15%, 150 billion. I mean, what would you ask for to give up control of this company? I mean, right now, Idea Pharmaceuticals, based on, I have to get my keyboard here to get the market capitalization up. Give me a moment. So this is a $3 billion company. Say $3 billion company. What would you do to capture the value in this potential, of IDE 397? And remember, that's not the only drug that they have. I'm just focusing on this because it's very rare to just see like a biotech stock relentlessly bid up without like more profit taking than what we've seen. Like, I mean, we've seen it go from like 47 to 35, but that's like really pretty average for biotech. I've got to believe that it's got to be 10 billion at the minimum, if not more, maybe 12, maybe 15 billion, or maybe they never sell. Maybe they just continue to put out data and investors never really let the stock go. They're like, no, this is too good. We're going to stay in. And that is what we have in the future. There's never a guarantee with anything, but certainly all the signals meaning what? Well, clinical trials, this is the essence of biotechnology. This is where the evidence is built on for whether or not a drug works or not. And all of these companies, of course, their economics, their financials are driven by the success or failure of the drugs, initially by clinical trials, and then, of course, by success in terms of like prescriptions. Uh, Certainly, all the evidence in terms of clinical trials thus far, and remember, the April trials was for a completely different drug. So they've got potentially two very large drugs in their drug pipeline. Yeah, I mean, in 6 months, in 12 months, I mean, if you're Roche, if you're Novartis, and you want the next Keytruda with $23 billion of annual sales, right? What would you pay for it today? Remember, annual sales mean like, Merck is going to sell like another $20 billion next year as well. So, I mean, you're buying into a string of potential revenues, and you have to take that chance if you're a bigger company that maybe it doesn't work out, maybe it's not 100%. But like, I'm thinking somewhere between here and next year, either investors will come and bid this up so that nobody can control it. In other words, the folks that own it know that this is an extraordinary drug. And as a result, Idea Bioscience is an extraordinary company, and they're going to make it so expensive that it's unaffordable for the big companies, or else a big company like Novartis, like Roche, like Amgen, like GlaxoSmithKline, like Merck is going to come and be like, yep, here's whatever, 12 billion, and we are going to take this and buy it. Obviously, for us, either one of us, either one situation, if it happened, would be brilliant, because I think in the ATG Digital, let's see here, ATG Digital Gold tier portfolio, we have Idea Biosciences. We bought in at 27, so about 46, a little under 50%. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a potential gain of like, several 100%, maybe even more. I mean, if there another clinical trial comes out confirming the information, yeah, we have, this will definitely get bid up to 60 or 70. And then from there, then the buyout gets even higher. Or, I mean, heck, I'll just take being up 300 or 400% and sitting around for 1,000%. Either way, that is the subject of today's live stream, which is Idea Biosciences. As you can see there, ticker symbol IDYA, market capitalization of $3 billion. We'll put up quickly for those of you who are biotech investing fanatics, geeks, nerds. This is their pipeline. You can see there's a lot going on here. This is not the only thing that they have. I mean, they've got this darovasertib, and that was what the initial excitement was in April last year. Then there's this ID 397. And then there's, other drugs. And as you can also see, it's not like, this is a complete secret. I mean, you can see on the side your collaborations. You can see Pfizer, Amgen, Gilead, Merck, GlaxoSmithKline. In other words, you can bet that people at all of these companies are well aware of what I am telling you. They have a clue. They're like, damn, those results were really big. What's going on? And more trial results will be coming over the next 6 to 12 months, which will be more proof. And with each proof point that comes, the price will get higher. And the price will get higher because investors will not want to let go of a good thing, because you do not find drugs that can actually work in 15% of some of the most destructive cancers in the world every day. This kinds of opportunities are few and far between. And professional investors that focus on biotechnology, they like me will be like, okay, this one is big, this one is for real, and we're gonna, we're not gonna give this away. We are going to want real material compensation in exchange for giving up control of the company, or else we're going to keep this price up. We're going to support this at such a level that nobody else can come in and sort of like cheat us out of it on the cheap. Before I go into comments and questions, some comments on Bitcoin. We just had the very first sort of like 30% correction, if you will, in Bitcoin, which happened yesterday, I suppose. I mean, and I wrote this Substack on it, and I'll just quickly share it. In this Substack, I really make the case that after you see like a big smash like this, like a mini crash, right? I mean, we've seen 80% drops in Bitcoin, right? I mean, this one was 27.4%. The high was in March, which was 73,802. And the low, if I'm right, for this move is 53,528. And what was this downswing driven by? Well, the Bitcoin halving cycle is very sort of like predictable in a broad sense, right? Because what happens? Well, April 19th was the Bitcoin halving. And at that point in time, all the miners, their revenue gets halved, right? Because now instead of generating 900 Bitcoin per day, Bitcoin is only generating 450. So unless there's a sudden jump in price, all their revenues get cut in half. But they still got to pay bills. So how do they pay their bills? Well, the very strong miners, they would have prepared for this and they've stashed cash. But the weaker miners, I mean, they got to sell their Bitcoin. And, if they had any stash of Bitcoin, they got to sell it. So they try to hold on to their Bitcoin as long as they can. Then eventually, at some point, if the price doesn't go up fast enough, there is this capitulation. In other words, they're like, okay, sell. What if it goes even lower? I want out. And I believe that that's kind of what we experienced over the last week or so. And of course, into any price weakness, you have, folks that really have no real convictions about Bitcoin, and they themselves are like, oh, well, what if it goes lower? So the country of Germany, which owns something like, 41,000 plus Bitcoin, they sold like 600. And I have no idea what these people are thinking, but they just left it to sell. In other words, they just essentially left it as like a market order, which is crazy. So of course, no shock then that, you had like a pretty good sized like drop, because the markets work like this. If you reveal your intention, what is your intention? I am going to sell. You reveal how much you're going to sell, and you just leave it there. Yeah, the market will absolutely set a very low clearing price. They're not stupid. Nobody will step in front of you and be like, yeah, I'll give you an even higher price. No, it doesn't work like that. So it's completely like predictable given everything that happened as to like why we have this. On the good side, it also tends to, set a clearing price, a low price for like everyone else that has no conviction, that doesn't really, like they were only in it for like a very rapid price bump. And we are seeing already that I put this up in our general chat today that the folks that really want large exposure, like they came in big on Monday. And if I'm right, we are going to start to see allocations start to go up, because like now at 27% lower, okay, it's Bitcoin price has rallied up a couple of percent. It's still obviously below 70,000. People like, okay, I'm going to put my 1% in. I'm going to put my 0.5% in. And you're going to see uh, money flow in. And so I think like this is going to be the short-term bottom for Bitcoin. And from here, we are going to start to see some big jumps, because I theorized this in the Substack, which is that based on my experience of managing money, here's how people actually put money to work. They don't go all in on day one. They just don't do that. Instead, the more risk averse people will be like, I'll take a 0.25% position and see how it acts. How it acts means, can I show, do I see positive performance? And if you do see some positive performance, then of course they're like, okay, I'll add another 0.25%. You get to 0.5%. And then price goes up some more. They're like, okay, I'm going to make this a full position. Maybe that's 1%, maybe that's 1.5%. Most people will not take a position beyond, like we're talking in a mutual fund, even in a hedge fund, unless they're very concentrated. Like the maximum position, for example, whenever I managed money, was between 2 and 3%, in terms of like actually that being the weight. And then once like, that fund, like as a result of its 3% weight, it starts to do well. Well, now they start to outperform everybody else. Then just like, well, what do they own? Right. And so then every analyst is tasked to be like, well, why don't we own that? Right. And now suddenly you have this like thing where everybody else starts to copy whoever else it is that is doing well. And so now you have more people coming to buy. And so I believe what's going to unfold over the third quarter and fourth quarter is that the folks that are making their allocations to Bitcoin today, and 0.5%, 1%, as Bitcoin starts to go up, because everything I've said to you about the halving supply shock is still there. We don't have enough Bitcoin relative to like all these people coming in. So we're going to see Bitcoin price jump. And with that, the funds that own Bitcoin are going to outperform. That's going to draw other people in, and they now will start to put their 0.5%, 1%. So you have this like what's called like a recursive accumulation. In other words, the folks that own some are buying more. That brings new investors in. They buy some, then they buy more as they experience success. And this is, as I put it in my Substack, like this layer cake style of accumulation. That's what generates, gains that, we like to see in our portfolio. It comes from people either increasing their position and then new people coming in, starting with an initial position, building that higher. And in my judgment, in my opinion, this is now underway for Bitcoin. If that's right, well, we're what, at 56, 57? Give it, I'll say in 3 to 4 weeks, we'll probably be well short of Bitcoin. We're going to get back to 70. Yeah, we're going to get to like a new high. And then, once it hits a new high, that, remember, investors buy high prices, right? They sell low price, they buy high prices. That's going to draw more people in. And it's just from there is going to be like that big candle higher to 100. And one of the things that, I've always noticed in markets that when you hit round numbers like 10, 100, 1,000, you almost always get like a 30% jump from there. It's almost like I think because of the attention that these round numbers draw, it brings people in that, that like you get this 30% jump. So I was on X and I was like, somebody was talking about, where they think Bitcoin will be come year end. I was like 130K, I think is a pretty good bet. And as you know from my Bitcoin forecast model for 2024, I think we see a million in 2025. All right. I'm going to open it up for questions and comments, etc. So throw them in the chat. We got David, regular live stream attendee. You used to be bullish on Lantern Pharma. Are you still? I am not. I think I'd much rather be in something like Idea Biosciences. Not that we're in an era of much higher interest rates. And um, when we had Lantern Pharma, we had much lower interest rates, and that supported a lot more speculative companies. That today the cost of capital is much higher. So I prefer to be in companies where we can see more evidence, more facts, very clearly, like Idea Biosciences or Mankind Corp, because when the cost of capital is higher, and if you are a financial entity that has no way of producing your own revenue, it gets harder to get investors to give you money unless you have a very clear drug like IDE 397. I can tell you, Idea Bioscience, when they go to raise money, they have no problems. So all their offerings are oversubscribed. And also, do I know of a biotech using stem cells for back or spinal problems? I do not. And we haven't really seen a lot of breakout therapies in stem cells in general. David has more comments. David's a big fan of Indian cooking, and he has a book by Yamuna Devi. I have a book which I would recommend. I think it's out of print, but I've always loved cooking from that book. Maybe on a future live stream, I will bring it and show it. Raul, also a regular attendee of the live stream, says, hope all's well. Question on Fannie and Freddie. Any new news? Any your thoughts on Mankind? Looks like it has gone up, but can go up more. Fannie and Freddie, it still seems to be on. Let me see if I can get a chart. Charts are an easy way to convey a lot of information very quickly. So let's just do, I use Fannie, which is Fannie Mae, because it is a bit bigger and a little bit more liquid. I mean, so it says that, yeah, you can't see it, but it says your browser has lost connection to your screen share audio. Well, my screen share has no audio, so I don't know what that actually means. Maybe I'm going to shut a few tabs down and try this again. Maybe I'll just refresh this and maybe that error goes away. But this still seems to be on. I laid out this idea that the second mortgage plan, which was approved by Freddie Mac's regulator and Fannie Mae's regulator, which is the FHFA, that was approved. And with housing prices and the housing market topping out, being in trouble, especially in the South in terms of prices, that this is something that will be very popular. I still believe that. As the election sort of news comes out and it's perceived that that if Trump is elected, that he was on his way when he was president to freeing these companies. So maybe that's the scenario. But whatever it is, it still looks like this is on. There's no necessarily any new news necessarily, but it still looks to be on based on, again, having tracked this opportunity for pretty much from the very beginning and the stock prices. Mankind Corp, I was looking at the price action on it yesterday, and they've got multiple events coming up this year. I mean, in addition to their earnings. So we just had their presentation at the American Diabetes Association conference, after which there was a price reaction. In other words, clearly enough people saw it and they went to buy the stock, anticipating, I believe, an upgrade in terms of Afrezza, which is their inhalable insulin's sales peak. But then we have, in August, we have Mankind presenting their first data on pediatric Afrezza, where they've been testing it on, I think, 4 to 18-year-olds. So the market will anticipate those events. So, and then obviously there's earnings, and then Later on, we've got the 30-week study, on adults that's coming. Then there's a pipeline data coming. So, I mean, they've got a series of events that draw short-term speculators in, and that should start to run this higher. I mean, mankind has been in a 3-year base as its financial condition, its operations, and everything has improved. It's not reflected in its market capitalization. So this could be huge. This could be huge. Here's some commentary on what I'm wearing, but remember, it's personal preference. I'm sure you choose what you wear. I get to choose what I wear. Um, Lars says, "Hey Paul, quite some time since you recommended a company called Energis, ticker symbol WATT. I haven't heard you mention it since. I would really appreciate if you could give us your assessment of this company." I mean, Energis is a microcap company with a revolutionary technology, essentially to give you wireless electricity. I mean, we're not just talking to charging your phones. We're talking about like wireless electricity, like, everywhere. I mean, um, I've always thought as like this is something that would, improve the quality of life in a significant way. But it is a small company and its technology is very much in development. They have not been able to get, for example, any large maker, any appliance maker, anybody else to really sign on and to implement it in scale, which is what they would need for them to become a large business. So it is a very promising technology. We still own it in our diamond tier portfolio. We're going to continue to own it and watch, because truth is that things can just suddenly take a jump. It's not like the appliance makers and the folks that use electricity are unaware of Energis's technology and innovation. Is just that to implement it means they have to change a lot of different things, and unless they feel certain that customers, their end customers, will pay for it and accept it, they're not going to move from it. I mean, while we're always focused on great new, incredible, phenomenal new ideas, the reality is that human beings, we fight change and we fight innovation, and so it's always a process. And the stock market can price in 10 years worth of future progress in a day, in a second, in a minute. But the reality is always like a little bit more slow, a little bit more difficult, and filled with ups and downs. And at current prices, I mean, Energous is just like trading for almost nothing. So we're not going to sell it where it is. We are going to wait. We're going to track it. What we'd be looking for is to see if they can make a real deal with a company that really implements their technology, and now they would start to get licensing fees. If that company had success, then another company will come to copy them. So this is how things diffuse, innovation diffuses. David says Keytruda works better in combo with Q Biopharma. Actually, there's an extraordinary number of combinations that are used with Keytruda. Yeah, well, sign me up as well as a hardcore biotech geek. Bill says, please give us an update regarding UiPath. UiPath is a robotic process automation company, and they do something quite simple, but something that has a lot of value. I mean, there's a lot of office tasks that can be automated. I mean, I've always used imagine cutting and pasting some piece of information. And while it may seem like this should be all automated, the reality is that there's a person that does this. I mean, at investment banks, they have like banks of people just sitting there, cutting and pasting, doing worksheet jockeys. And a lot of that can be automated. I mean, the amount of it this is done is just extraordinary. I mean, so UiPath has a very real, technology. It's a real innovation that can save costs. They clearly scaled up well ahead of what the end demand was. they just recently announced that they're cutting, I believe, 10% of their staff. Um, I expect that as 2024, 2025, as we go through, and the effect of higher interest rates, the inflation that picked up from 2020 till now starts to hit companies, and they are focused themselves to cut down and to economize. Yeah, then there's only one way forward. I mean, which is that the essence of innovation is that you get more with less. And so you make the upfront investment and then you get the benefit of the savings over time. They're going to come to a technology like RPA, robotic process automation. So I believe we're somewhere near the bottom of this. And then over the next 2 to 4 quarters, we're going to start to see marginal better upgrades for their business. And because the stock has just been smashed so hard, like it'll lead to big jumps from current prices. So that's what I believe is going to unfold for PATH over the next year, 12, 18 months. This is my mom. She's wishing me a happy birthday, which was a couple of days ago. Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it. And Lars was talking about when I was showing this. The Nature says, what do I think about Nova and Aspen aerogel stocks? Nova is a solar installation company. I have made the call that I believe that the new energy cycle is beginning again. In other words, those have bottomed out. We put that one probably about 6 months too early. We put more in more recently. We've added Solar Edge, Enphase, SunPower. It does look like this cycle is about to turn back up and we want to be in. So I like both of those stocks. Aspen is I mean, they make insulation, new technology-based insulation. The stock has been rising. Their cycle seems to be, I don't know, in some way against what the housing data has been. Perhaps because their technology is new and they're still out of stock because their new demand is still greater than whatever is going on in the housing marketplace. So still positive on ASPN, Aspen Aerogel stock. So with that, I think that's the last of these questions. I hope you enjoyed this live stream on IDYA, Idea Biosciences. I'm trying to make the live stream every 12:30 on Tuesdays, but some days, there's just a lot going on at ATG Digital. We have a pretty small team, but we put out a lot of work. This week I'll do 2 updates, one on the gold tier, one on the platinum tier. And then obviously there's the YouTube, this YouTube video and everything else that we do. So if you're interested in getting continuous coverage on the kinds of questions that you are posing me, atgdigital.media, subscriptions begin at $9.99 per month. With that, I'm going to say thank you for attending this live stream. I'll see you next Tuesday. This is Paul saying bye.